It was late at night. The research facility was quiet except for the hum of machines and the faint echo of footsteps in the empty hallways. Most people had gone home hours ago, leaving only a few night shift workers behind. Among them was a man named David. He was a single dad, working as a janitor, and nights like this were his usual routine. He had long ago learned to keep his head down, do his job, and leave the facility as quickly as possible. Life had not been easy for him. Since losing his wife, everything he did was for his young son, Ethan, who was waiting for him at home. Money was tight, and David often went hungry so that Ethan could have dinner, books and clothes. Tonight, like most nights, David carried his little brown bag with a slice of pizza. It was the only thing he could afford after buying groceries for the next day. He found a quiet corner near the locker room and sat down on a metal bench, pulling out the pizza slice. The warm smell filled the air, and for a few moments he allowed himself to imagine eating without worry. The world outside was silent and still, but something unusual was stirring in the shadows nearby. David thought he heard a soft, trembling sound, almost like a small whimper or a tiny cry. At first, he ignored it, assuming it was a stray rat or some equipment making strange noises. But the sound came again, clearer this time, and it made him pause, mid-bite. It was not the sound of any animal he had ever heard. It was higher-pitched, almost musical, but with a hint of fear in it. Curious and concerned, he stood up and walked toward the noise. The sound led him to a narrow corridor near the loading docks. Normally, this area was locked and empty at night. But tonight, the door to one of the storage rooms was slightly open, just enough to let a small creature slip through. David's heart started to beat faster, not from fear, but from a strange mixture of curiosity and worry. He carefully stepped closer, keeping his hands visible in case it was something dangerous. There, crouched in the corner of the dimly lit room, was a tiny creature unlike anything David had ever seen. At first glance, he thought it might be some kind of exotic pet that had escaped from the facility. But as he looked closer, he realized it was a small dragon. Its scales were shimmering in soft shades of green and gold, and its big round eyes looked at him with a mixture of fear and sadness. The little dragon was no bigger than a small dog. Trembling and shivering as it tried to curl into itself, David froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. His mind raced. Was this a hallucination? Was he dreaming? But the creature was real. It sniffed the air and let out another small whimper. It was hurt, scared, and alone. Despite the strangeness of the situation, David felt a surge of empathy. He had known fear and loneliness in his life, and he could recognize it in the little dragon's eyes. Hey there," he said softly, trying not to startle it. "I'm not going to hurt you." His voice was calm, gentle. The little dragon tilted its head, studying him, but did not run. It was too exhausted, too frightened to move. David knelt down slowly, careful to stay at its level. He reached out a hand, but the dragon flinched and took a small step back. David understood. He didn't know what kind of creature this was, but he knew it needed help. And somehow he felt it was connected to him now. He sat down a little farther away, keeping his distance, but letting the dragon see he meant no harm. "You must be hungry," he said quietly, glancing at the pizza in his bag. "I don't know if you eat this, but maybe it will help a little." The little dragon looked at the pizza with its big, glistening eyes. Then it shook its head slowly, as if it understood him perfectly. Its tiny voice, soft and almost musical, whispered, "I can't eat." David's heart ached. He had never seen anything so small and vulnerable, and hearing those words made him realize how serious the situation was. The creature was hungry, but the food that was natural for him could harm it. For a moment, he felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. He had faced challenges in life's raising a child alone, surviving on very little, but this was something he had never imagined. Still, David did not give up. He reached into his bag and pulled out the pizza, holding it out slowly, letting the dragon see that he only wanted to help. "I don't know what you eat," he said, "but maybe we can find something together. You're not alone. I'll help you." The little dragon sniffed the air again and stepped closer, though cautiously. Its scales glimmered under the dim lights, and David could see the faint tremble in its tiny body. It was scared, yes, but it also seemed to sense that David was different from the others. He wasn't a threat. He was kind, and kindness mattered more than anything right now. David spent hours sitting in that cold, empty corridor, talking softly to the creature. He didn't know if it could understand him completely, but he hoped it could feel his words. He told stories about his son, about the nights he had worked multiple jobs just to make ends meet, about the little moments that kept him going. The dragon listened quietly, occasionally lifting its head to look at him with curious eyes as the night went on. David noticed something else. The little dragon's eyes, though tired, began to relax slightly. It had started to trust him, just a little, and that trust was everything. He knew he couldn't take it home, not yet, but he could stay with it, keep it safe, and figure out what it needed. Eventually, first signs of dawn appeared outside the windows. The facility, once silent, began to hum with activity again. But David and the little dragon remained in their quiet corner, sharing a moment of connection that neither would ever forget. A human and a tiny alien, meeting in the middle of a vast, strange world. Finding comfort in each other's presence for David. It was a reminder of why he kept going, why he worked so hard for his son, and why, even in the darkest, loneliest moments, acts of kindness mattered more than anything else. And for the little dragon, it was the first time in a long time that someone had offered help without fear, without judgment. Someone had simply cared by the time David finally stood up. Preparing to return to his duties, he knew this was just the beginning. He had no idea what the next days would bring. No idea how he could help this tiny creature survive in a world that didn't understand it. But he also knew one thing with certainty. He would not abandon it. Not now, not ever. And in that quiet moment, with the first rays of sunlight touching the floors of the research facility, the bond between the human janitor and the little alien dragon had already begun, a bond built on empathy, courage, and a willingness to care, no matter the odds. David returned to the corridor the next night, carrying the same slice of pizza he had for dinner. He wasn't sure what he expected. Maybe the little dragon would be gone, maybe it would be angry or scared. But when he peeked around the corner, he saw it sitting in the same place, its small body curled up, eyes wide and nervous. It seemed even smaller under the harsh fluorescent lights, and David felt his heart tighten. "Hey there," he whispered softly, kneeling down at a safe distance. "I brought this for you. Maybe you're hungry?" The dragon looked at him, its big round eyes glimmering with uncertainty. Then it shook its head slightly, and in a soft, trembling voice said, "I can't eat." David's stomach twisted. He had expected that it might not like human food, but hearing the words made the problem feel real, serious, and urgent. The little dragon's body was thin, trembling, and weak. Its wings, though small, looked fragile, and its tail curled protectively around itself. It was obvious the creature had gone without proper food for a long time. "Okay," David said slowly, trying to keep his voice calm and soothing. "I get it. You can't eat what I eat, but maybe we can find something that works for you. You're starving, I can see it. We'll figure it out together." The dragon's eyes glimmered with a mixture of fear and hope. It took a tiny step toward the pizza, sniffed it, and then slowly looked back at David. It seemed to understand his intentions. David reached out his hand slowly, not touching the creature, but letting it know he wanted to help, not harm. For hours, David tried to think of what might work. He remembered stories from science articles and research papers he had cleaned before. They mentioned different creatures needing special diets. He didn't know what an alien dragon might need, but he figured it had to be something natural, gentle, and nourishing. He looked around the storage room, checking for anything that could be safe. Small fruits left over from staff snacks, bits of bread, even water. Each time, the dragon sniffed and then shook its head. Finally, David decided to set aside the pizza completely. He put it down gently, away from the dragon, and simply sat near it, talking softly. "I may not know what to feed you," he said, "but I know you don't have to be alone. I'm here. That's the first step. We'll find food soon." I promise." The dragon tilted its head, listening to him. It seemed to understand that he wasn't going anywhere, that he truly wanted to help. Slowly, it inched closer, still trembling, but trusting him more than anyone else it had ever met. David felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in a long time. Even in the middle of a strange, quiet, and lonely night, a connection had been made. Time passed slowly. David took his jacket off and wrapped it partially around the dragon, creating a small, safe space for it to rest. He spoke to it about simple things, about his son Ethan, about the long nights he worked as a janitor, about pizza even though he couldn't share it with the dragon. He told little stories about things that happened during his day. Funny things that made him smile or shake his head. At first, the dragon didn't react much. It was too weak and nervous. But eventually, it started responding. A small chirp, a flick of the tail, a gentle nudge toward him. David smiled. Even tiny gestures mattered, and this small creature was slowly learning to trust him. Then came the hardest part. David realized he couldn't just leave it there when his shift ended. It was too weak, too vulnerable, and completely alone. But he also knew he couldn't take it home. His apartment was too small, his son would be scared, and the world outside would not understand what to do with an alien dragon. He needed a safe place to stay, at least temporarily, and he had very few options. David thought back to the storage areas he had cleaned earlier in the week. There was a small, unused supply room on the second floor, far from cameras and busy staff areas. It had shelves, a small vent for air, and it was relatively warm. He decided to bring the dragon there, carrying it carefully in his jacket, keeping it close to his chest to protect it from harm. The dragon shivered as he moved, but it didn't struggle. It seemed to sense that David was a protector, not a threat. When they reached the supply room, he set it down gently and rearranged some boxes to create a little nest for it. He even used a small blanket he had found in a lost and found bin to make it more comfortable. "Rest here," he said softly. "I'll be back as soon as I can with something you can eat. I promise I won't leave you." The dragon curled into the blanket, its small body finally relaxing slightly. David could see it was exhausted, weak from hunger and fear. But it felt safe for the first time in what must have been days or weeks. He stayed there with it for a while, watching over it, till he had to return to his duties. During his next break, he returned with water in a small cup. The dragon sniffed it cautiously, and then drank carefully. It was a small victory, but David smiled. He realized that trust was more important than food at this point. They were building a bond, and that bond would carry them through the harder challenges ahead. Days passed, and David returned every night. He tried different things, small fruits, leaves, grains left behind by staff, but the dragon refused them all. Each time, he felt a pang of worry. He had never faced a challenge like this before. He couldn't understand alien biology, and he had no training in caring for creatures like this. Yet somehow, his determination and patience seemed to matter more than his lack of knowledge. One night, the dragon finally did something new. It stepped closer to him and nuzzled his hand. David froze, heart pounding. This tiny gesture was more than he could have hoped for. It showed that the dragon trusted him enough to be close, to allow him to care for it. He gently stroked its scales, careful not to hurt it. The dragon leaned into him, and for a few moments, the world outside the facility didn't exist. There was only them, a man and a little alien dragon. Finding comfort in each other's presence, David realized that caring for the dragon was changing him as well. He had spent years focused on survival, on providing for his son, on doing what he could just to get through the days. But now, he felt a deeper sense of purpose. He was not just surviving, he was making a difference, even in the smallest way. And in return, the dragon was teaching him patience, empathy, and the quiet power of trust. Despite the joy of these moments, David knew the challenge was far from over. The dragon needed proper food, and soon. He decided to reach out to someone discreetly, someone who might know more about unusual creatures. But he couldn't risk alarming the facility or drawing attention to the dragon. He needed someone kind, someone who would understand without judgment. Meanwhile, the little dragon began to change too. It started to explore the small supply room, tentatively testing its wings, sniffing the corners, and occasionally making soft, chirping sounds. David smiled at every little movement. He celebrated small victories, each sign of life. Each moment of trust, each tiny sign of strength. One night, as he watched the dragon curl up and close its eyes, he realized that this small creature, lost and scared in a vast and unfamiliar world, had taught him something he had forgotten long ago. Even in a life filled with struggle and loss, acts of kindness could create connections that mattered more than anything else. Food could wait. Trust could not. Love and care were the most important things they both could have. David finally understood why he had been given this task. Why fate had brought this little alien dragon into his life. It wasn't just about feeding it. It was about giving hope, offering safety, and showing that even in a world that often seemed harsh and indifferent, compassion could shine through. And as the first light of morning touched the facility's walls, David promised himself that he would never give up on the dragon. He didn't yet know how to feed it or how to keep it safe in the long term. But he knew one thing for certain: he would protect it, care for it, and do whatever it took to help it survive. In that quiet supply room, hidden from the rest of the world, a bond had been formed, one of trust, hope, and care. And although the dragon could not eat human food and the road ahead was uncertain, they both felt a little less alone. That night, and every night after, David brought not just food or water, but presence, comfort, and unwavering kindness, the things the little dragon needed most. David knew that feeding the little dragon was more complicated than he had imagined. Every night, he tried to offer something: new bits of fruit, pieces of bread, even a few vegetables he had snuck from the staff kitchen, but the dragon refused them all. It was clear now that this creature was not just picky. Its biology was completely different, and human food could not sustain it. David's worry grew each day. He could see the dragon's ribs slightly more pronounced, its tiny wings weaker, and its movements slower. Each small sign of hunger struck him like a blow. Still, David refused to give up. He sat beside the dragon every night, speaking softly to reassure it. "I know you're hungry. I know it's hard. But I'll find a way to help you. I promise." The dragon would sometimes make a small, chirping sound as if acknowledging his words, and then curl up beside him. Those small gestures gave him hope, but the need for real food became urgent. One night, after finishing his cleaning duties, David decided to search the facility more carefully. He went through storage rooms, supply closets, and even the old research archives. Maybe there was anything that could work for the dragon. As he moved quietly through the dimly lit halls, he realized just how unusual this situation was. A tiny alien dragon, hiding in a human facility, completely dependent on him. It was an enormous responsibility, but he didn't feel fear. He felt determination. In one of the old archives, he found stacks of research reports, some decades old, some recent. He began flipping through papers, hoping to find clues about alien biology. Most of the reports were technical and over his head, full of words he didn't understand. But then he found something interesting: a study on small, winged creatures from another world, describing their dietary needs. The creatures needed special minerals, plant-based proteins, and liquids that were not common on Earth. David realized he was dealing with something far beyond his usual world. But at least he had a clue. He went back to the supply room where the dragon waited. He carefully placed the papers on the floor, showing them to the creature. The dragon tilted its head, its eyes curious. It seemed to recognize that David was trying to understand, trying to help. He couldn't speak its language perfectly, but he could see the faint movements in its scales and eyes that told him it trusted him more than ever. Over the next few days, David experimented carefully. He mixed different plant materials from the storage areas, soaked them in water, and even added small minerals from harmless chemical supplies he found in the lab, hoping they would be safe. Each time, the dragon would sniff and then step back. It was frustrating, but David refused to lose hope. He reminded himself of his son. Ethan had faced difficulties too, and David had taught him to be patient, to never give up. He would follow his own advice now. One night, exhausted from his shift and his search for food, David finally sat down beside the dragon and spoke quietly. I know you're tired of me trying things you can't eat. I'm tired too, but I won't give up. We'll find something. I won't leave you. The dragon made a soft chirping sound and nuzzled his hand. David smiled, feeling a warmth that made the long nights worth it. Then an idea came to him. He remembered a colleague, a low-level researcher named Sarah, who was kind and understanding. She often helped him when he asked small favors, like finding cleaning supplies or explaining a tricky instruction. She had always been gentle and curious about unusual things. David realized that she might know how to help the dragon without causing trouble, but he had to be careful. The facility had strict rules. Bringing attention to an alien could create serious problems. The next night, during his break, David approached Sarah quietly, carrying the dragon hidden in his jacket. She looked startled when she saw him, but David quickly explained, "Please, don't be alarmed. I found this little creature in the facility. It's hungry and scared, and I don't know what to feed it. I need help." Sarah's eyes widened, but her expression softened as she looked at the tiny dragon peeking out from his jacket. "It's amazing," she whispered. "But yes, it's delicate. I think I can help. Let's be careful. No one else can know." Together, they created a plan. Sarah brought small, safe ingredients from the lab, liquid nutrients designed for delicate life forms, small plant proteins, and minerals that could be dissolved in water. David watched as Sarah carefully prepared the mixture and placed it in a small dish for the dragon. At first, the dragon hesitated, its eyes wide and fearful. But David whispered softly, reassuring it. Slowly, it approached and lapped at the mixture. David could hardly believe it. The little dragon's eyes brightened, its body trembling less as it drank. For the first time in days, it was getting something that was safe and nourishing. David felt a mix of relief and joy that he had not experienced in a long time. The creature was alive, and for the first time, was thriving. After that night, feeding the dragon became a nightly routine. David and Sarah took turns preparing the mixture, experimenting carefully to ensure it was exactly what the dragon needed. With each passing night, the dragon grew stronger. Its scales glimmered more brightly, its wings twitched with new strength. And it even began testing small movements in the supply room. David could see it gaining confidence. It made him proud. Even though the dragon was eating properly, David still spent hours talking to it. He told it stories about his life, about his son, about small human joys like pizza, soccer games, and bedtime stories. The dragon responded in its own way, chirps, gentle nuzzles, and tiny flicks of its tail. David realized that care was not just about food. It was about companionship, reassurance, and trust. One night, as the dragon curled up beside him, David whispered, "I know you're far from home. I know your family must be worried. But you're safe here. I'll keep you safe. I won't let anything hurt you." The dragon nuzzled him gently, and David felt a connection stronger than anything he had known before. David also began to see changes in himself. He had always been focused on survival and providing for his son. But now he was learning patience, compassion, and responsibility on a different level. Caring for this little creature required more than just physical effort. It required empathy, understanding, and love. And he realized that love could be extended beyond family, beyond species, and even beyond what seemed possible. Even with the dragon thriving, there were challenges. David had to be careful when moving it, hiding it from the staff, and keeping its presence a secret. He couldn't risk anyone discovering it, or worse, harming it. Every night was a delicate balance between protection and care. But David accepted the challenge willingly. He had faced many hardships before, and this was just another one, different. Yes, but equally important. As days turned into weeks, the dragon began to trust him completely. It would nuzzle him when he entered the room, chirp softly when he spoke, and even flap its tiny wings excitedly when it saw him. David smiled every time. The creature was no longer just a frightened alien hiding in a facility. It was a friend, a companion, and someone who depended on him for survival. Finally. David realized that helping the dragon had changed more than just its life. It had changed him. He had learned that kindness, patience, and understanding could bridge worlds. Even though he had no idea how to return the dragon to its family yet, he had given it hope, safety, and nourishment. And that was the most important thing for now. One night, as the dragon settled into its nest, David whispered, "We'll figure out the rest soon. I promise. You're safe, you're fed, and you're not alone. That's all that matters tonight." The dragon chirped softly and curled up beside him, its body finally relaxed and peaceful. David knew that tomorrow would bring more challenges, but for now, they had each other, and that was enough. Even though the little dragon was now eating properly and growing stronger, David knew their situation was still fragile. He could keep it safe in the supply room for a while, but the facility was not a permanent home. Staff came and went, cameras were everywhere, and even the smallest mistake could put the dragon at risk. David spent days thinking about how to protect it and how to give it a better chance at survival. He realized that eventually they would need help from someone who understood creatures like this. Someone who could provide safety and care without judgment. One evening, after his shift ended, David returned to the supply room and found the dragon waiting. Its eyes lit up when it saw him, and it chirped softly, a sound that had become a daily greeting. David smiled and knelt down beside it. "Tonight, we're going to do something important," he said quietly. "I have an idea, but it might be risky. I need you to trust me." The dragon tilted its head and blinked at him, and for the first time, David felt a wave of relief that the trust between them was unbreakable. David had thought about Sarah, the kind researcher who had helped him with the dragon's food. She had been discreet, careful, and understanding. If anyone could help, it would be her. But bringing her into the supply room at night was risky. If someone saw them together, it could raise alarms. David spent a long time planning. He memorized staff schedules, checked security camera routines, and mapped out the safest path. Every detail mattered. Finally, the night came. David moved quietly through the empty hallways, the dragon snug in his jacket, wings folded and eyes wide but calm. When he reached the small break room where Sarah waited, she looked surprised but nodded immediately. "I'm ready," she whispered. "Let's get this little one the care it needs." Together, they carefully moved the dragon to a hidden corner of the lab where Sarah could prepare special nutrients and monitor it safely. The dragon chirped softly, glancing between David and Sarah. It was clear it trusted them both.
Oh.
And David felt a wave of pride and relief. He realized that kindness, patience, and trust had brought them to this point. What started as a frightened, hungry creature hiding in a facility had become something that could thrive. All because someone had cared enough to try. Over the next few days, Sarah helped David create a small routine. They prepared meals carefully, ensured the dragon had water and warmth, and even created a small play area so it could exercise its tiny wings. David watched in amazement as the dragon began to explore its new space. It climbed small shelves, flapped its wings, and even tried hopping short distances. Each small step made David's heart swell. He saw not just survival, but progress, growth, and hope. During these days, David also learned more about the dragon. Through gestures and simple sounds, he began to understand its needs. It liked warmth, soft surfaces, gentle conversation, and quiet spaces. It didn't respond well to sudden movements or loud noises, and it became anxious when left alone for too long. David adjusted his routine accordingly, spending extra time with it, speaking softly, and making sure it always felt safe. As the dragon grew stronger, David faced new challenges. Staff members occasionally came near the hidden area, and he had to think quickly to hide the dragon or distract them. He also worried about what would happen if the dragon's family was looking for it. He didn't know where it came from, how it ended up on Earth, or if it had anyone searching for it. Each night, he lay awake after his shift, thinking about the dragon's future, wondering if he was doing enough. One night, Sarah suggested a plan. "There might be a way to reach its family," she said quietly. "We have equipment that can detect life signs and send signals. If we do it carefully, we might contact them without alerting anyone else." David's heart leapt. The thought of reuniting the dragon with its family seemed almost impossible, but now it was within reach. He nodded, feeling both excitement and fear. This was the next step, and it had to be done perfectly. The next few nights were a careful mix of planning and preparation. David and Sarah set up the equipment, keeping the dragon calm and comfortable. Every step had to be precise. Any mistake could scare the dragon or alert the staff. The dragon, sensing their focus and care, stayed close to David, its head resting against his chest. He whispered to it, "I promise we'll find your family. You won't be alone anymore." The dragon made a soft chirping sound, and David smiled, feeling its trust like a warm weight in his heart. Finally, the equipment was ready. They activated it carefully, sending signals into the air, hoping that someone in its family would respond. Hours passed in silence, the dragon resting quietly beside David. Then, a faint signal came back. It was weak, but it was there. Someone was listening, somewhere far away, responding to the little dragon's call. David felt a rush of relief and hope. They were not alone in this mission anymore. Over the next several nights, they worked to strengthen the connection. David kept the dragon calm, fed it carefully, and spoke to it constantly. Sarah monitored the signals, adjusting the equipment to reach the distant location. The bond between the three of them grew stronger. David realized that this mission was not just about survival. It was about love, care, and dedication. The dragon had become more than a creature in need, had become a part of their lives one evening. As they finally established a clear connection, the dragon responded in its own way. It chirped and moved excitedly, flapping its tiny wings and nudging David. He laughed softly, tears in his eyes. After so many nights of worry, of watching it grow weaker and then stronger, the moment had come. The dragon's family was close. They could feel each other's presence, even across the vast distance. David and Sarah worked carefully to coordinate the reunion. It could not be rushed. The dragon needed to be calm, the facility needed to remain unaware, and the connection needed to be stable. Each night, they practiced, refined the signals, and reassured the little dragon. David spoke softly, telling it stories, comforting it, and reminding it that it was safe. The dragon chirped in response, nuzzling his hand and curling against his chest. Finally, the night came when the reunion could happen. David and Sarah guided the dragon to a safe area, activating the equipment fully. The dragon responded immediately, its chirps loud and clear, its wings flapping with excitement. David held it gently, feeling its tiny heartbeat against his chest. He whispered, "Your family is coming. You're going home." The dragon chirped again, leaning into him, trusting him completely. And then, as the first rays of dawn touched the facility, something miraculous happened. A shimmering light appeared, and through it, the dragon's family emerged. They were unlike anything David had ever seen, beautiful, glowing, and majestic. The little dragon squealed in delight, rushing forward and nuzzling its family. David watched, heart full, as the reunion unfolded. Tears filled his eyes. After all, the nights of worry, care, and love, the dragon was finally home. David stepped back quietly, letting them have their moment. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction and relief. He had done what he set out to do. He had protected this little creature, nurtured it, and helped it return to its family. And in the process, he had learned something profound, that kindness, patience, and care could change lives in ways that nothing else could, as the dragon and its family disappeared into the shimmering light. David turned to Sarah and smiled. "We did it," he said softly. "We really did it." Sarah nodded, smiling back. "And we helped more than one life tonight," she said. "We reminded ourselves that love and compassion can reach across worlds." David left the facility that morning with a light heart. He returned home to his son, feeling proud, hopeful, and deeply changed. He realized that even in a world full of challenges, the smallest acts of kindness could make a difference. And sometimes those acts could bridge worlds, unite hearts, and create miracles. After the little dragon was reunited with its family, life for David slowly returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after such an extraordinary experience. The supply room was quiet now, and the nights were no longer filled with the anxious waiting for a small, trembling creature. Yet, David felt a strange emptiness in the evenings when he returned from work. The little dragon had become more than a responsibility. It had become a friend, a companion, and someone he cared for deeply. Its absence left a quiet space that reminded him of the nights they had shared, the trust they had built, and the bond that had formed between human and alien. David's first thought, as he walked home each night, was of his son, Ethan. He had told Ethan a simplified version of the story, leaving out the more complicated details about the research facility and the alien dragon. Ethan listened, wide-eyed, fascinated and amazed. "Dad," he said one evening, "you helped a real dragon." "That's amazing." David smiled, ruffling his son's hair. He realized that the experience had changed him as much as it had changed the dragon. He had learned patience, courage, and compassion in ways he had never imagined. And now he wanted to pass those lessons on to Ethan. Back at the facility, David and Sarah kept their secret well. No one ever discovered the dragon had been there. David felt a quiet pride in this. The experience had been extraordinary, yes, but it had also been a reminder that sometimes the most important actions are done quietly, without recognition or applause. Kindness, he realized, did not need an audience. It needed only the courage to act. Even when the outcome was uncertain, weeks turned into months. And the memory of the little dragon became a cherished story David carried in his heart. He continued his work as a janitor, but his perspective on life had changed. He noticed small things more, the small moments that mattered, the laughter of children, the kindness of strangers, the simple joy of sharing a meal. Each night, as he tucked Ethan into bed, he felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, knowing that he had made a difference in the life of a being from another world one day. David received a surprising message from Sarah. She had managed to get a brief communication from the dragon's family, thanking him once again for his care. The message was simple, filled with warmth and gratitude, though the translation was limited. It told him that the little dragon was safe, happy, and thriving, and that its family would never forget the human who had saved their child. David felt a swell of emotion as he read the words. He had never expected recognition from another world, yet the message filled him with quiet joy and pride. David shared the news with Ethan, who clapped his hands in excitement. "Dad, you're like a hero," he exclaimed. David chuckled. "Maybe," he said softly. "But the real hero is the little dragon, for trusting me and being brave. I just helped along the way." In the following weeks, David began to notice small changes in his own life. The people around him, the staff, the few who knew him well, noticed a new calmness, a quiet confidence. He approached challenges differently, with patience and determination. He became more attentive to Ethan's needs, more creative in finding ways to make life easier and happier. The experience with the dragon had reminded him that every small act of kindness, every bit of care could have a ripple effect far beyond what he imagined. One evening, David found himself walking near the park with Ethan, watching the sunset. He thought about the little dragon, about the nights they had spent together, and about the trust they had built. He realized that trust and kindness were not limited to humans. They were universal. A gesture of care, a small act of compassion, could cross worlds, bridge differences, and create connections that lasted a lifetime. Ethan, holding his father's hand, asked Dad, "Do you think the little dragon will ever come back?" David smiled gently. "Maybe," he said. "But even if it doesn't, it will always remember us. And we'll always remember it. That's what matters. The bond we shared doesn't disappear just because someone goes far away." That night, as David prepared dinner for himself and Ethan, he reflected on the journey that had begun so unexpectedly. A frightened, hungry dragon had appeared in his life, and through patience, care, and courage, he had helped it survive and return home. In the process, he had learned lessons he would carry forever. Life could be hard, uncertain, it's full of challenges, but it was also full of opportunities for kindness, connection, and love. David realized that even small actions, could have enormous impact. Giving up a slice of pizza, staying late at night, quietly comforting a trembling creature, all of these had mattered. They had saved a life, built a bond, and changed the course of events in ways he could hardly have imagined. And that realization filled him with a quiet, lasting joy. In the months that followed, David and Ethan continued to share their lives, carrying the lessons of the dragon's story with them. They helped neighbors, showed compassion to strangers, and never overlooked opportunities to be kind, patient, and understanding. The story of the little dragon became a private memory, a cherished reminder of the power of trust and care. Occasionally, David imagined the dragon soaring through its own world, happy, safe, and free. He imagined it playing with its family, exploring new places, and growing stronger every day. And he felt a sense of pride knowing that he had been part of its journey, had given it hope when it needed it most, and had proven that even in the darkest, most unexpected moments, kindness could shine brightly. One quiet evening, as he tucked Ethan into bed, David whispered, "Always remember, no matter who you meet or what challenges you face, kindness matters. You never know whose life you might change." Ethan smiled sleepily, and David kissed his forehead, feeling a deep sense of peace. He knew that the lessons of the little dragon were now part of his own life, part of the values he would pass on, and part of the legacy of care and courage that he and Ethan would carry together. And so, life went on, quieter than the extraordinary nights that had passed, yet richer in understanding, love, and connection. David returned to work each night as a janitor, but he no longer saw it as just a job. Each task, each interaction, each small act of care had meaning. Every sweep of the floor, every helping hand he offered, every kind word he spoke, it was all part of the life he now lived fully, with awareness, gratitude, and hope. The story of the little alien dragon, and the single dad who gave his pizza and his heart, remained a secret to most of the world. But for David and Ethan, it was a living memory, a testament to the fact that courage and kindness could make a difference in ways that transcended fear, distance, and even worlds. And that truth, he realized, was more magical than any dragon, any light, or any wonder he had ever imagined. David often looked back on that time with a gentle smile. He thought of the nights spent comforting the dragon, of the careful preparation of food, of the quiet trust that had grown between them. He realized that those nights had changed him forever. He was no longer just a single dad struggling to survive. He was a man who knew the power of love, patience, and selflessness. And in teaching those lessons to Ethan, he knew they would continue to ripple outward, touching lives in ways he might never see, but would always hope to. Even though the dragon had returned to its family, it had left a permanent mark on David's life. He had learned that sometimes the smallest gestures, a slice of pizza, a soft word, a protective hand, could become the most powerful acts of all. And he had learned that trust, once earned, could cross boundaries that nothing else could cross. As he finally settled into bed that night, exhausted from a long day of work, but filled with peace, David whispered quietly to himself, "We did well. We did the right thing." And in his heart, he carried the warmth of the dragon's trust, the lessons of patience and kindness, and the quiet knowledge that even in the ordinary moments of life, extraordinary acts of love could change the world.